August 11th, 2014, Ezell Ford, 25, Los Angeles, California. November 20th, Akai Gurley, 28, Brooklyn, New York. November 22nd, Tamir Rice, 12, Cleveland, Ohio. December 2nd, Rumain Brisbane, 34, Phoenix, Arizona. December 30th, Jeremy Reed, 36, Bridgeton, New Jersey. January 8th, 2015, Artego Damon Howard, 36, Union County, Arkansas. February 4th, Jeremy Lett, 28, Tallahassee, Florida. February 15th, Laval Hall, 25, Miami Gardens, Florida. February 28th, Thomas Allen, 34, Wellston, Missouri. March 1st, Charlie Ledoux Canong, 43, Los Angeles, California. March 6th, Nescalis Vicente, 37, Aurora, Colorado. March 6th, Tony Robinson, 19, Madison, Wisconsin.
This world is a mean world to live in, to stay in. This world is a mean world to live in, to stay in. No mother, no father, no sister, love, no brother. This world is a mean world to live in, to stay in. Sometimes you got to go so hard to live in, to stay in. Sometimes you got to go so hard to live in, to stay in. No mother, no father, no sister, love, no brother. This world is a mean world to live in.
Don't shoot him. Don't shoot him. He has no weapon. He has no weapon. Don't shoot him. He didn't do anything. He doesn't have a gun. He has a TBI. He's not going to do anything to you guys. He just took his medicine. Keith, don't let them break the windows. Come on out the car. Keith, don't do it. Keith, get out the car. Keith, Keith, don't you do it. Don't you do it. Keith, 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 don't. Did you shoot him? Did you shoot him? Did you shoot him? He better not be fucking dead. He better not be fucking dead. I know that fucking much. I know that much. He better not be dead. I'm not coming near you. I'm gonna record though. I'm not coming near you. I'm gonna record though. He better be alive because he better be alive. How about that? Yes, we're here over here at 9453 Lexington Court. These are the police officers that shot my husband, and he better live. He better live. Because he didn't do nothing to them. He good. Ain't nobody touch nobody, so they all good. I know he better live. I know he better live. How about that? I'm not coming to you guys, but he better live. He better live. Y'all hear this and you see this, right? He better live. I swear he better live. Yup. He better live. He better fucking live. He better live. He better live. And I'm kidding. I ain't going nowhere. I'm in the same damn spot. The fuck? That's okay. Did y'all call the police? I mean, did y'all call an ambulance?
I'll be so glad when the sun goes down. When the sun goes down. I'll be so glad when the sun goes down. When the sun goes down. I ain't all that sleeping, but I wanna lie down. I wanna lie down. I ain't all that sleeping, but I wanna lie down. I wanna lie down. I wanna lie down.
Okay, perfect. Here we go. So today I have the pleasure and the privilege of speaking with Mr. Donald Byrd, a citizen artist, choreographer, and the artistic director at Spectrum Dance Theater here in Seattle, a position he's held since 2002. For his work, Mr. Byrd has been recognized with a Bessie and nominated for a Tony Award. He also has many other accolades. Today we'll be talking about the focus, a little bit about his work and the work it does to expose anti-Black racism and violence. And we're also going to be talking about a few more personal things, including Mr. Byrd's time at Yale, where he attended a year of his undergraduate career before transferring to Tufts. So I thought maybe to start off with, we could talk a little bit about your childhood in Clearwater, Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you wanted to start off by just kind of describing your childhood, and we can go from there.
Okay. So I think I ended up in Clearwater after having lived in primarily in Jacksonville from the time I was an infant until I was about 8 or 9, and then I lived briefly in Perry, Florida, which is where my great-grandmother lived. She was, as they used to say then, she was sickly. And so we went to take care of her. And so I ended up in, I ended up at first in Clearwater when I was in 5th and 6th grade. And then I went back to Jacksonville and did 7th and 8th grade in Jacksonville, and then back to Clearwater where I was from 9th until I graduated high school, 9th grade until I graduated high school. And so the thing about Clearwater that I think, and for me, that was remarkable was, I mean, this is, in the 50s and 60s. And so basically it was still the Jim Crow South. And in Jacksonville and in Perry, I was very much aware of that, I was very conscious of that. And so by the time I got to Jacksonville, it seemed really different to me, and I didn't know why at the time. I mean, now they would talk about it. I think it would be framed in this notion of Black excellence. And so it was like this really strong community that supported its schools and the teachers and the students. And there was an expectation that you would excel, and the teachers were there to help you do that. And it was really a remarkable experience being there, and I hadn't seen this before. And so I took to it. I came out of myself in a way that I had not been before. I think it's not that I was shy, but earlier I had been very outgoing, and in those other environments that outgoingness was kind of frowned on a little bit. It was too much of an individual, and I didn't conform enough. And so when I got to Clearwater, even in 5th grade, I sensed that it was okay for me to be who I was at the time, and to become who I might become. And actually, and it wasn't just from the teachers, it was from the other students as well. Certainly by the time I was 14 and in 9th grade, it was really great in terms of like being accepted by the other students. In some ways, I might have been popular, you might say, but not in the traditional sense of high school being popular. I was just popular because people acknowledged and accepted what they thought was different about me, and that was cool, and they thought that was very, that was like, wow, that's great, that's Donald Byrd, it's kind of like that. And so a lot in Clearwater, a lot of the things that I had always been interested in started to manifest themselves. Like I was interested in, I became interested in classical music. I there was some interest in dance at that time, even though I didn't do it, but I was interested in it and became aware of it. I was also, there was an organization called College Fund, and they tutored, one of the services that they provided is what they did was they discovered young Black students, high school age, starting around 14, they started to identify you, who through standardized tests, if you had done well on these standardized tests, then they would kind of contact you and say, oh, we're blah, blah, blah. And we are interested in this notion of Black kids going to elite colleges and universities, and we'll provide the kind of support that you will need. And so that included tutoring and ways of preparing for exams and stuff like that. So I did that, and then so it was. I mean, I felt very. In some ways, it was kind of the happiest I've ever been. The only other time I've been happier is when I lived on Venice Beach in California. I was really happy there. But I was very happy there, and I had friends for the first time, and like real friends. And I think at that age, 14 to 17, you know, it's really important to have friends. I had male friends for the first time, you know, but you know, like hanging out with the boys, you know, was I think was important to my identity and my sense of belonging. And so Clearwater was great for me.
I guess then, so having like had this really happy period, especially like during adolescence, which is a time when a lot of people begin to feel insecure and retreat into themselves rather than doing what, then kind of the transformation you described of you know, you feeling really comfortable with who you were and having people respect and value who that was. What was it like going from this culture of love and acceptance and also excellence, from going from that to Yale when you began your undergraduate?
That was a shock. I mean, it was a shock on a lot of levels. It was a shock. Here I am in another part of the country, number one, that in New England, and this sense of the behaviors and mores and were all really different than what I had come from. It was more formal than what I had been used to. And then it was more embedded in kind of historical contexts and class. And I think that in some ways that may have been more, may have been more, in some, at the time, sometimes it felt that was more significant than race at Yale was class. I was very much conscious of of race at the time, if I have it correctly, that it was all male at the time Yale College was, and so male students who had gone to public high schools usually did not room with kids who had gone to prep schools. And so it was a real kind of separation even in that first year. And so and I think I was confronted with, in terms of the race part, and I think it's also intertwined, that it's difficult to separate them out, that I was confronted with a level and a kind, I should say maybe a kind of whiteness that I had not been conscious of or aware of or confronted with in some ways before, because in some ways at the time it felt like a confront to me. You know, I could not, I had a few meals at the beginning in the common, Yale Commons, and then I was so thrown by what I saw there, you know, like the space itself and these paintings and stuff. I don't know what it's like now, paintings with these guys with these mutton chops, you know, around the room. And I was going, what is this place? And also the way, you know, that there were attendants, I don't know what they call them, that would kind of, you get your meal and they sometimes they would clear your table, trays and stuff. You know, it was just this, excuse me, this way of interacting with you. And then also, at the time, it changed throughout that first year, but having to wear, as the rules were, you had to wear a collar and tie to meals in the Commons. And so that was like, what? And then, of course, the morning meal you could have at your residential college, even though you were not living there, you could go there and have, and then you didn't have to be so dressed. But because you were out basically for the rest of the day, so that means I got up and I put on the coat and tie, jacket and tie in the morning. So I'm walking around in a jacket and tie all day. So that was completely not familiar to me and a way of being. And actually the first month there, after the first couple of meals in the Commons, I stopped going there. I would eat off campus. So I was so uncomfortable. I would eat alone off campus because I could not, it was emotionally challenging for me. Just that, because I don't know what I expected to going from where I was about the notion of these, you know, these elite universities and colleges. I do know that I was fine about it until just before it was time to depart Clearwater. Then I started to go, wow, what am I doing? You know, what is this? You know, and so it. I think some things about it. Yeah, I think that there was a kind of level of, like I said earlier, about formality. So when people would ask me how I was, being a Southerner, when a Southerner asks you how you are, they expect you to respond, oh, I'm da 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 da. And I discovered very quickly is if I start to tell people how I was doing, they'd walk away.
That's awful.
You know, that's just because it was just so I just learned very quickly to say, people go, how are you? I go, fine, thank you. How are you? You know, just, and kind of keep going, you know, and that there was and I think also, I think at the time at Yale, there weren't very many Black people there, certainly not in undergraduates. There were some, but in some ways, the average Black student at the time, I think at Yale, had come from very similar backgrounds as many of the Black. So they were kind of a privileged Black class. You know, they had come from professional parents or academics or, you know, like that. And so they were it was all very familiar to them, it seemed. And so I remember one incident where these kids, I saw them in the Commons and they said, oh, tell me about yourself and blah, blah. I don't think they said, tell me about yourself, but they just started talking to me. And they said, oh, you should stop by where our rooms and that sometime. And so they gave me where they live and on Old Campus. And so one day I decided, it had worked for me in the past in Clearwater, if there was somebody I met and I stopped by and then we would become friends. So when I stopped by and you know, right, that obviously was before cell phones, so I couldn't text and say, oh, I'm gonna come over, you know, like that. It kind of showed up, they opened the door and they were like stunned silence that I was there. You know, they just kind of stared at me for a really long time. And finally they go, oh, why don't you come in? And so I spent maybe, I don't know, maybe top 30 minutes there, but it was a very awkward 30 minutes. And then I started to develop a belief system around what people said to me there was that it was not, a lot of things was that it was what's the expression I'm looking for? It was not the right thing to do. It was the polite thing to do. That people did a lot of things out of politeness. And so then part of what my job was to learn how to read that and read those what were they? Those signals to be better at reading them and then adapt my behavior to those signals. So I think, even though that was going on there and I was really uncomfortable with that, and I mean, the first half of the year in particular, I mean, in some ways you could say it probably was traumatizing. It was traumatizing because also, you know, at the time, and I think this may still be true to some degree in New Haven, but there was a lot of animosity between the community and the college. It was just so much tension. And so I can't remember what street I was on, High Street or something like that. I'm kind of walking and this car drives by and these white kids call me the N word and throw a chair at me.
Oh my God.
And I was just kind of like not used, that had never happened to me even in the South, you know? And so so there were a lot of, I think what I started to think about it was that it was kind of brutal. It was brutal on a lot of levels. I think the competition was brutal. And then also the social context was brutal as well. It felt brutal. I felt assaulted often. And I felt inadequate, the thing that you brought up before, where people start to feel insecure at a certain adolescence. Well, that started to manifest itself for me at Yale, and not feeling that I had a place, or feeling completely isolated. So I felt that my kind of social education was lacking. So people would talk about foreign movies and I'd never seen a foreign movie and a foreign film. So I joined the Foreign Film Society, you know, and I think there were a couple of other things like that. So I went to foreign films anytime the society was showing something, I would go see whatever it was. So of course it was like this incredible, excuse me, learning curve that was actually very exciting to learn about these directors and movies that I did not know about, or a way of seeing the world that I had never been exposed to or thought about. The only perspective I knew was an American one, and primarily kind of Southern American one. And then for the first time being exposed to these other perspectives. And I think the whole, in many ways, I always felt like I was playing catch up, trying to do what needed to happen, and you know, to actually succeed academically, but also succeed socially. And so I think it really came to a head for me when Dr. King was assassinated, and I was so offended when people will come up to me and say, when I say people, I mean white people, will come up to me and say, "I'm so sorry," blah, 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 you know, like that. And I'm going like, they don't, that, you know, that doesn't mean, and I think I kind of was in a rage for a while, and I withdrew, and I did not interact with people in many ways. And so that, you know, so, and I think it was at that point when I decided that I wanted to get as far away from Yale as possible.
Um, I'm wondering a little bit about like, so the language that you use to describe your first year at Yale, it wasn't just necessarily like the initial culture shock, but it was also kind of an ongoing assault on who you were, and kind of everything that you'd been comfortable, like, I mean, I guess the norms were totally different than you were used to, and no one was asking you, you know, like what you thought, or trying to like get to know you. It was all about you having to adapt to this entirely different code of conduct, and you know, already used the word traumatizing. So I'm wondering kind of about what the long-term effects of that time at Yale were for you.
Wow. The long-term effect. I think it's that's not like my godson does. He's 25. He does a burst of energy like that. No, but I think on some level what it did was I started to develop distrust for people in general, not just white people, but for people in general. That I could not take people for uh, for what appeared in front of me. There was always, or what they said to me, that there was always something underneath it that I had to discern or extricate from from what was being said to me or how people were behaving towards me. And I think the other thing that happened for a really long time, and I don't normally talk about this, and I don't think I ever have really, but it became, and I think I understand that that there are many people, Black people, people of color that have very similar kinds of things. I became really fascinated by the power of class, and by turn the how it lives inside white bodies, and that I felt that, and so I started to do things, I think, that were designed to give me more proximity to that. Mm. So whether in social relationships, well, mostly in social relationships, I think, but also perhaps in, even though I didn't have a profession at the time, but in possible professional relationships, that, and so, and wanting to know and be close to the, because these were all young people, the children of the elite in American social political life. So, and which I was good at. But I think part of the problem with that was that that I assumed for many years that proximity, it would rub off on me, and by rubbing off on me, that I would have some of that power, and which obviously I discovered I did not. I mean, because it would always return to, well, you're Black, and so no matter who, I mean, I'm going to share this story. I was arrested once. I've only been arrested once in my entire life. I was arrested once, and I actually thought I would be okay in the environment that I was in because of my bouginess, and I thought it would protect me in some ways, but it did not. And it was the same thing in this situation. That what happened, how that being at Yale during that time, and being around people of a certain class, of people, and that had, they had wealth, they had class, therefore they had power, and these were the children of them. So I made a habit of getting to know those people later. I mean, in some ways, do you know that play 6 Degrees of Separation? Yes, so I was kind of a little bit, I think, like that character in that play, the Black character in the play. And I think so I think the result of that behavior was around survival. Like, how do I survive this? If I have been put in these kinds of environments, how do I survive them? That it was always fighting to survive. I mean, I had felt when I had gone off to school that I had been betrayed by my family, because that was a generation of Black people where education was everything. And so you have to be educated, get an education. So even if we have to send you off to separate you from everything that's important to you or has been important to you, we're going to do it because down the road it will pay off. So, I mean, and later when I read the Wretched of the Earth, which is a book by Frantz Fanon, and he talks about that one of the strategies of colonialism was to separate the intelligent, bright, talented young people from their communities, and indoctrinate them into this new culture, the colonial culture. And I felt like that's what happened. And so I embraced that, but I was also angry at my family for that. So I think in some ways it created this there was this distance that developed between me and my family as a result of that. I think that was not conscious at the time. And so, and then my behavior, often I would do things that I thought in some really subtle way would punish them for that. And I think also one of the things that I said, I mean, when it struck me when I went home for Christmas break the first time, and it was a little bit like that everybody seemed to be suspicious of me, my friends that I have from high school. And I thought of it a little bit like, I'm going to say it this way, it sounds a little harsh and cruel, crude, that I had the smell of them on me, and everybody recognized it, and therefore I was not to be trusted anymore as well. And I mean, obviously, I think it's taken me years to work on those things, you know, which is all a result of being put in that environment that I willingly went into because I believed it was the best for me. Uh, and so I think one of the things that I've seen that happens at colleges and universities now when Black students come in is that there are many more support systems to support. Then there were no support systems. You just needed to figure it out, just like everybody else. And so and so in some ways, without some support or it, I made up reasons for things. You know, I kind of invented why it was a certain way, and often those things were not true. I discovered later, you know, because part of the reason that there was a problem with it was because I had no context. And so I think when my experience at Yale, when I started to soften, when I played in the concert band at Yale, and we went on a month-long European tour. And so that was the first time that and I had played in the band, you know, normally during the academic year and stuff like that, but somehow living with people and traveling with them for a month, I got a different side of who was there, who was at Yale, and I didn't feel like I was on the defensive all the time. I felt that during the academic year, those 2 semesters, it always felt like I was on the defensive. I was defending myself, my personal self, emotional and psychic, and sometimes with that other incident, I felt my physical self. I was also, I felt defensive about why I was there, you know, because a lot of the talk of, you're only here because of whatever, what is it? Some program. What was the thing the government, what is it called? I forgot.
Affirmative action.
Yes, affirmative action. I should know that. That's so sad that I don't remember that. So sad. Affirmative action. Or that you were always suspect. And so I felt I was always defending myself on some ways. It's like, I don't think I defended myself in the way I would later do, which was like, not only am I as smart as you are, I'm probably smarter. And what I did later, I think as a result of those experiences, Yale, that I would go on the offensive before someone could attack. So, so I think I probably lived one of some of the harm of that was kind of basically being an angry, aggressive, and defensive person all at the same time. And also, I think I started to take on a lot of the behavior of entitlement, that somehow that kind of rubbed off or seeped into me. And so that I felt entitled, and I felt that people needed to listen to me, that they needed to do what I wanted to, my way was the way. And you know, and often that could be very alienating.
What you were saying when you were giving at the beginning of your answer, when you separated the 2 main effects into distrust and suspicion of taking people at face value, and then fascination with the power of class and a desire to be in proximity to people who held that power to see if it could rub off on you in some way.
Mm-hmm.
On the topic of like the first part, it reminded me, I was watching a video that was kind of like a short interview with you about Greenwood and about and something that you said from there, which is kind of along the lines of people are in denial by nature about most things unless you kind of make them confront them. And I was wondering if, even though obviously there's a difference between being suspicious of people and not feeling like you can take them at face value, and that's kind of the product of being attacked and feeling the need to put yourself on the defensive at all times and to protect yourself. But I was wondering if there's kind of a connection between that and then maybe your understanding of human nature now, and also understanding of your role as an artist in making people pay attention to things and not deny things.
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, just there was a lot in what you just asked me. but but I think that is a part that drives that the notion of I that in my aesthetics, in terms of how I work and the work that I create and how I want it to how it reaches people. I think almost from the very beginning of my making work, I stopped. One of the things this notion of Black respectability, it's just so like, I am not going to be respectable. I'm not interested in that. And it's not just Black, and as a Black person being respectable, because then the notion of that white people will listen to you if it's kind of clothed a certain way. And so mine was often about, the work is about rebellion, in some ways about being rebellious, about being confrontational, and to actually pushing people to discomfort, and wanting them and insisting that they lean into the discomfort. I mean, one of the things that I used to say when I'd be working with dancers, and I'd say that the point is, it's actually kind of a variation on a quote from Conrad in Heart of Darkness, where there's this phrase that that people kind of early on, when the book was published, were kind of latched onto. And actually, I read the book at Yale, so this is thank you, Yale. Was this fascination for the abomination. And so in the work that I do, and what I was doing, was the thing is that people would see something, it would make them uncomfortable, and they would want to retreat from it. So the point was how to make it so compelling that they could not retreat, that they were kind of forced to sit and kind of watch, a little bit like Clockwork Orange when he's there with the eyes. It's kind of, I wanted to do, that's what I want to do to the audience. I know you want to leave, you want to stop looking at this, but you can't. And another image I would use was like the old cartoons where the character would be jumping across the murky water and he's on a log, and then suddenly the log would start to move, and then the eyes would open and you realize he's standing on a crocodile. And so those were kind of the images that I worked with in terms of strategies, in terms of in engaging audiences. So and I think, I mean, it's complicated, not complicated, it's kind of complex in terms of that. Is my expectation is that you do not get to look away. You do not get to participate. You need to sit here and watch this. And it's not that I'm saying or wanting to say that my perspective or how I see it is the only way to see it, but it is one of the ways to see it. And if you are feeling uncomfortable with it, then that is telling you something about who you are. And so then that's even more of a reason to kind of engage with this. So I think, I'm not sure, I think I was responding to the last part of your question, and but I think that all of my experiences found a way into my choreographic work. And I said early on in my choreographic career, like in the 70s sometime, somebody asked me, well, why do you do this? Why do you like choreography? And I said, it's because I finally discovered one thing that could contain all of my interests. In college, for example, I've been interested in music, classical music. I've been interested in philosophy. I've been interested in theater. I've been interested in classics. And so all of those things, I found like the art of choreography could contain them, or I could find a way to make them. There was room inside of it to contain them. And so, uh, so I think what I have been trying to do is to make room to expand in some ways what choreography is, and so that it can contain more and more things, and that usually perhaps that kind of uncomfortability that people have is the result of that it does not conform to their notions of what choreography is or should be, or what it should be engaged with. I hope that kind of answered your question.
Yeah, I'm sorry I took so much into that. Sometimes I just keep adding things and trying to pull things together. Yeah, I mean, on that, I was struck by when you emailed about the interview. In your email signature, you have the sentence that the theater should be anything but safe.
Yeah.
And I thought, and I'm seeing now how that connects to what you were just talking about. But I think that's interesting because right now we're seeing, like, in social justice movements and kind of also beyond that, there is a discussion of what places should be safe and what places shouldn't be safe. And I'm wondering if, I don't know, like, I guess your perspective on that, and if the theater shouldn't be safe, what should be safe and for whom?
Yeah. I don't know. I think a couple of years ago, I think there was an incident at the University of Mississippi, I think it was, and the Black students, they were saying that they didn't feel safe. And I was kind of shocked by it, because I kind of, from my perspective, from my life, I never felt safe in university settings. Inside of white society, I'd never feel safe. So I go, what? So I was kind of curious about, where's the expectation that you should feel safe? And, I mean, especially as a Black person, where's the expectation you should feel safe? So maybe what should be being considered is not, do you feel safe? But maybe, what do you need to do to protect yourself? Because I think that in some ways it kind of suggests that the institutions have a responsibility to make you feel safe, and they do. And I'm not saying that they don't, but they do have a responsibility to do that. But also, in some ways, it's kind of looking for safety, looking for something outside of you to do that, rather than taking responsibility for your safety. And that's not to victimize the victim, or but rather just to say, I feel much better when I will take responsibility for this and not depend on somebody else to do it. And so there are a lot of, I have a lot of expectations around a lot of things, but there are, I have never felt that, white America, I could count on white America to protect me. And as I said earlier, and you pointed out, is that I could not trust that what was being said to me was the truth or authentic.
So given all of that, I feel like some people could, or maybe I'm getting this from various pundits, but some people have characterized all of the Black Lives Matter protests, all of the protests for racial justice and defund the police, all of those movements as kind of maybe like a waking up of white America. And there've been, statistics about in various areas, there are more white people than Black people even at these events. And
Yeah.
Given your experiences, do you, I don't know, like how confident do you really feel to believe that or trust that this is some kind of big awakening all of a sudden of white America?
Yeah. I think I do believe that it's some kind of awakening or reckoning, you know, and I think because I've started to believe more uh, this this idea. I saw it on somewhere. I mean, somewhere on social media. There's this placard and it says something along the lines of it not until white Americans realize that white supremacy is their problem too will anything be done about it. And so, and I think I'm seeing that. You know, I mean, sometimes it's really odd to hear white people interrogate their own whiteness. It just feels really strange because that job in some ways has been done in the past by Black people and people of color to audiences of Black people and Black people of color, but never people of color, but never by white people. And so it's kind of strange, you know, the experience of witnessing it. And so I do, and I think there's a certain level. I mean, one of the things that I thought that would have happened 30, 40 years ago in this country, it didn't happen. And so I was always and that it seems to be happening now. That, you know, what is the expression, the curve, the long curve of justice bends. No,
the arc of moral justice. Yeah, the arc of history bends towards moral justice. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so it's a and it is long. And I think that's the thing that I have to remind myself. I think that people, you know, it's kind of like a lot of the problems. I mean, that issues and stuff that I've had in my personal life, and I go, oh, I've solved that. And so I'm always surprised that other people are just going, what? Didn't that happen a long time ago? You know, so it's a little bit like that with this. I do believe that there is a kind of authenticity about it, about the movement. And I think it's important and that there be that white people actually should be doing it because white people have the power to change it. And so it's good that they're out in the forefront and that there are more, that they're there because, you know, it's like when back in the crack epidemic, you know, that, you know, it wasn't until white kids started using crack, white people started using crack, then it became a real issue. I mean, solution wise, other than throwing people in jail. And so, yes, the short answer is I do think there is some traction here and I have hope for it. Yes, I have hope for it.
Is there, I don't know, like, is there also maybe like a strangeness about it? Because it feels like you've been at a certain place for, you know, your whole life and much of your career with like asking questions and demanding people to look and acknowledge certain parts of our society. And you've been doing this work for so long, and then suddenly all these people, like, it suddenly has become like the timely thing to do, whereas before you were kind of ahead of your time. Is there a strangeness in like your experience of kind of having been thinking about these things and demanding attention for these things for so long, and then suddenly having people kind of also start to like look for it and interrogate it?
Yeah, I think there is some of that. I mean, because it's a little bit like I'm kind of in a, what do you call that thing? A wind tunnel, and I'm kind of hearing the stuff that I've been talking about or interests that I've had and concerns kind of being blown back to me, and I'm kind of hearing them that way. So, I mean, I think that is in fact part of the strangeness, but I think also the strangeness is the suddenness of it. It just seemed to kind of go boom, like the George Floyd was murdered, and then suddenly it was like it's not an excuse, it was like the lid came off. Mm-hmm. And a lot of things that people had been feeling and thinking and wondering about started to come out. And so it manifests itself not just in demonstrations, but in things that people are writing, things that people are saying, how people are expressing their feelings. And I think that, I think that it just kind of, in some ways it reassures me that sometimes I say this about education all the time. Like, I think being a teacher is a really hard thing, because teachers have to work very much. I mean, good teachers have to work very much inside a belief that what they're doing will make a difference, but they may not be getting daily affirmation that that's true. And so it doesn't manifest itself until much further down the line, down the road, it starts to manifest, and so it's the same thing with this kind of, especially with the art form, with dance in particular, is that people don't see it in how it goes about doing what it's doing as being a credible partner in all of this.
Mm.
And so, so I think that it is, it's strange. It feels strange to kind of hear it being echoed back, number one, and also that it and also taken, the thinking taken beyond whatever those original echoes were, and 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 I and I actually, I mean, I said kind of strange, but I think also amazed. I'm amazed, and so the one thing that it does also is that the people that I work with, the young people, when I say young people, they're 30 and under, like young people. To me, that's young. That's really young. I have some really fantastic young artists that work with me, and they are so smart. I mean, not just physically, kinetically smart, they are intellectually smart too. Some of them, that intellectual ness will sometimes manifest itself, or can manifest itself in ways that are recognizable in kind of academic settings, and other times that intelligence manifests itself in other ways. And so I just love how I finally feel like, and those are the same group of people that are out for the most part doing the demonstrations, that I feel like I have partners to work with for my work, that I'm not pushing the boulder uphill all by myself, that there are a lot, and sometimes they are much better at pushing it in certain directions and opening up different perspectives. So, but I think but still, when I was talking about the strangeness, it was like some of the strangeness was around the leadership part that white people have taken. And a lot of these people I'm talking about are Black or people of color. But I do think I want more of the strangeness. Come on, white people. It's kind of like, it's kind of like that. Like I mean, as I said, if the problem is going to be solved, they actually have the power to do it. So then I want to see more of that. But it is strange, because Black people have always taken, and brown people have always taken that burden on. And that maybe what the future looks like is that we don't have to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way you describe that as kind of like a strange phenomenon, but also like an almost an amazement at the possibility for kind of lightening the load and having other people like you with whatever you're trying to do, and the people you work with kind of also taking that on, but then also like throughout society having white people take on burdens that have been that Black and brown people have always kind of assumed it was only like they were the only ones who could do it, and there was not any interest. I think that's a really interesting way of talking about it. And I wonder a little bit, I guess this is going a little bit away from that, and going back to when you were talking about dance and how dance isn't necessarily recognized for like the thoughts or the ideas that you'd been pushing forward, and then you're hearing them in this echo in the wind tunnel or whatever it is. I was wondering a little bit about I guess what it was like for you coming to dance after being interested in all these other fields, and how you've expanded what might be traditionally construed as, oh, this is what modern dance should do, or this is what modern dance has done. I guess maybe about the process of transgressing these what I've seen as these, you know, hard and fast rules, and what that's been like for you. Yeah.
Yeah, these hard and fast rules. I think, I mean, sometimes I think I have, and I think many artists are motivated by the fight. So it's a fight, and I've been, certainly in the past I've been belligerent, and so I think that I mean, in some ways you might, I mean, if we talk about these hard and fast rules in the art world and the dance world and stuff, it's a little bit like what we see in the social justice sector movement around things that were unjust, or that they were certain groups or ideas are privileged, certain parts of the country are privileged, and and so the I just think that for me it was like I always notice what pisses me off, like, okay, why am I pissed off about that? What is it about it? And it can't be that's unfair. I'm not one of those people that goes like, that's not fair and da 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 da. So it's kind of like what I was saying about safety. I don't have any expectation that the world is fair, or people will interact or engage with me in a fair way. And that when their assessment of what I'm doing or have done and stuff, all of their stuff comes with it. And the stuff is not about how they can be fair. Is not part of it. So I think I'm trying to kind of, I'm non-linear, as you can tell in my thinking. I tend to think that, what am I trying to get at here? About the role that dance plays can play. I love dance. I think I have to say that. I absolutely love, when I discovered dance, like formal dancing, concert dance, and all that stuff. I mean, I always loved to dance as a child and stuff, and watch the old dancing movies, and stuff like that. I just loved it. And, but I love dancing. I learned something from dancing. And I think it's important to say this. I was always, even at my most insecure in some ways, I could always talk. And so I could justify anything, like, here's the reason why, and blah, blah, like I could go off in that way. And maybe, and so one of the things that I learned from dancing was that I could not talk my way out of something or into something. It had to be demonstrated. So the thing is, like, I couldn't say, I didn't do the double pirouette. So I can't say, well, I didn't do the double pirouette because of blah, 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 blah. Like, okay, that's great to know. Now, what does that mean? And how does it affect your ability to do the double pirouette going forward? And so I love dance. Dance taught me to shut up. And, some people need to express themselves. I was one of those people you need to hold back. You need to pull back. In 12-step programs, they talk about the idea of put the take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth. Stop talking so that you can listen. And so dancing taught me to listen, and it also taught me to value experience. That experiential is an important and significant part of learning. Maybe not for all things, but for many things. And so I love dance. I mean, there were all these other things that I was interested in or have been interested in, and still have some lingerings of those interests. But dance actually made it possible for me to become who I am, you know, not just in my identity, I identify as a choreographer, but in terms of how I process information and how I take information in. So what was it? Why did I say I love dance? Because I love dance. It was related to the last part of the question that you asked me about.
Is it the idea that there aren't rules, or that, because I was talking about like hard and fast rules, yes, and transgressing those.
Yes. And so dance kind of gave me a way to do that, because I think by nature, in some ways, I'm rebellious. I mean, and I don't think people would have thought it. Let's say the people that knew me at Yale, I don't think they would have thought that I was rebellious. I was compliant, and my compliance came from when I was a child. That the idea of that, I didn't question if I was asked to do something or told to do something by members of my family and stuff. I just did it, you know. And so I think because there was like that love, I knew they loved me, they cared about me, and so they wouldn't ask me to do something that was like, that did not, what they were asking me to do in some ways was a manifestation of that love. And so my rebelliousness came, I mean, and really have to all go back to 1967 in Yale, is this thing, in order to survive, I need to be rebellious. I need to rebel against everything at this point in time. And so these hard and fast rules about modern dance, like I love dance so much that I actually know a lot about the history of modern dance and its development, you know, and I think many people do that, or do what I do. And some things that, and I think what the thing to be learned from some of those early modern dance people is that they were breaking rules. They're breaking rules, they're breaking norms, and that they were in this quest of understanding. And so in some ways it was for understanding. So it was not about the dance per se, but the manifestation of what they were questioning showed up, manifested itself in movement. And so I've always, who's the thing that I say to myself, and sometimes I say to people I work with, who told you that that was the way that it was supposed to be? Where did that come from? So I ask myself that all the time. Who told me that you could only do this, or you had to do it this way? And I think that what I try to do in my work is that I acknowledge history, I acknowledge the past. So I think and I think it's a way of, what do you call it? Not sidestepping, it's a way of being preemptive. That if in the work there's a manifestation of the knowledge of the history and where it comes from, even though it's going in another direction, then you can't question me about, you don't know what you're talking about because you don't know where it came from. And so that's kind of a strategy. I mean, sometimes I say that in my work, there are lots of, what do they call them? Easter eggs. You know, they're little things that tell you something about the history of something, or kind of relationships to this work, to some other work, to my work, or somebody else's work in the past, historically. And so for me, the way of breaking the rules is to I mean, what's that expression that says, before you break the rules, you have to know whatever all that is. So it's a little bit like that. I mean, I think one of my flaws sometimes as a person, certainly in the past, one of my character defects in the past is that I know more than you do. And again, that's a defensive thing. That goes all the way, we can go, since goes all the way back to Yale in 1967. I got very good at defending myself by any means necessary, you know. Do I really believe that I'm smarter than people? No, I'm always amazed at how smart other people are. I'm just going like, I didn't know they were that smart, you know. It's, you know, and it's just, you know, so it is. I am interested in, like, I don't believe in hard and fast rules. In general, I mean, I think maybe that's the simplest way to answer it. That I don't believe that at all. I think those hard and fast rules are designed for convenience. You know, they make some things easier, and that sometimes you can utilize them. And but I think it always what's important is a questioning of them is really important.
When you were talking about what dance was for you, and you were talking about not being able to talk your way out of it, and kind of the the the, the demonstration aspect of dance, and also kind of maybe like the honesty of not being able to kind of, you know, circumlocute your way out of like what you were being asked to do, and kind of the physicality that made me think a little bit about this moment where and now I'm not referring to like the well, I'm going to refer to the protests, but not that necessarily, but just this entire quarantine period where people have kind of, you know, we're talking over Zoom. This is like a very disembodied experience. Our lives have become very virtual. And I was wondering about maybe the effects of this time on you, and I guess obviously like on your work. And also, I don't know, like something that I've been thinking about a little bit is how the words like there's a physicality to the way we talk about things like protest movements and demonstrations, and even just the word movement, that I think is really interesting. So I guess all that is to say, I'm doing another really long question. Uh, yeah, like what's been the effect of this time on you as a person, and then also on you as a choreographer, and has it maybe reestablished the necessity of an art as much about physicality and demonstration as dance is?
Yeah. Again, that's a lot. And I appreciate the allotness of it. I think how it's affected me is that I feel like I've been forced to rethink things. That we've had several meetings at Spectrums with the staff, all via Zoom, of course, and one of the things that I put out there for people, I said, in this discussion, there's one assumption that we can't go back to the way things were. So you want to talk about we're going to talk about in the things that it's not a return to something, you know, and so, and that what we are doing or want to do is not substitution for something, but it's something new. And that's what I'm interested in. So it's kind of forced me this time to think that way, because it really was in the past. It has been, okay, it's August, blah blah blah. We're getting ready for, well, it's July 31st, and the company will be returning to work in a month or a little bit longer, and then they'll have this many weeks to do this, and blah blah blah, and we'll be in these studios, and so all of that has just gone out the window. So it has caused me to think about, like, how do we do what we do as an organization, and how do I as an individual artist make the work that I make, given the restraints and restrictions, and how do I do that? And so in some ways it's about, I think it's about that the medium of dance has been in the past the body, and I'm starting to think that maybe now it's more than the body, that maybe it's the body augmented in some ways. Maybe that's the way to think about it. And then how do you, and then in what space then does this augmented body exist in, and how is the work then created in it? And so that's very much how I've been thinking. And also I've been thinking a lot about with the current the movement, the Black Lives Movement, and how it's kind of infused everything. I don't want to be a cliche, so I don't want to, and I do not want to, I mean, I think it's necessary sometimes to reiterate things or to restate them, but I don't want to state things now that I see hundreds of people, thousands of people are stating in the work that I do. I want to, like, what advantage do I have being a person who's been around for a certain amount of time and seeing certain things? What is my, that time allows me to see that maybe somebody younger cannot see, and what insights might come out of that. And so I'm interested in making work that way. Also, the idea of, I mean, I've always been interested in science fiction. And so, but the notion of Afrofuturism has kind of come back to the surface for me. You know, and Octavia Butler lived here in Seattle. And so there's been a kind of renewed interest in her work, and the idea of making that maybe the work that I'm doing going forward is Afrofuturistic in some ways, that in some ways, in order for, especially the work around climate crisis, you know, that with, and also with the, in order for the work or the current situations to resonate more, maybe it needs to be contextualized differently. And then and that perhaps a Afrofuturistic kind of framework might actually highlight certain things that that I and others may not have noticed or thought about before. So, so I think now that what I've been, this time has made me just generally think about, like, the old ways of doing things are not available. And so I need to be what I've always said I am. I'm a creative and inventive person. So get to work, be creative and be inventive, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because earlier we were talking a little bit about like your feeling of kind of having people like around to like help you maybe, and like having people, the people you work with be also like the ones pushing things forward and doing that, and kind of having like some of the challenges you faced in the past maybe becoming easier to bear, but then at the same time you're confronted with this entirely new world essentially, and so you're trying to adapt to that. I think that's very interesting, and I realized that it's been over an hour, so I don't know, like, is there anything else you'd like to talk about, or?
No, I mean, we can go, if you have other questions, we can go on. I just need to be off this call by 11:45.
Okay. Yeah, you will definitely be off this call by then. Yeah. I'm looking up through my questions quickly. Well, there's one quote that I read where you were talking about your relationship with dance and the kind of dance you wanted to pursue, and you said you wanted to be a fiery John the Baptist for the dance that you want. And
how long ago did I say that?
I found it in I'm trying to see. Oh, it says 2009.
Okay, so it wasn't that far.
No.
Yeah. Actually, I saw that yesterday somewhere. Somebody referenced it, you know, in something, and so I a fiery John the Baptist. I think that's right. how do I, yeah, I do. And I think that's what I'm doing on some level. I mean, I could be perhaps a little bit more evangelical about it. You know, maybe. And when I was younger, I think that's how my persona and what I did actually went about it that way. But I think now uh, that I think I've always wanted to convert people to dance, to modern dance in particular, to dance in general, but specifically to contemporary modern dance, the kind of dance that I do. And even people that are work in this field, often they are so committed to their particular aesthetics and viewpoint that they are unable to appreciate the work of other people that fall outside of that. And so I want this thing of being people to just, I mean, I love dance, as I said earlier, but I love all kinds of dancing. I don't think I've ever seen any kind of dancing I didn't like. Maybe I didn't understand it, blah, blah, blah. But I just kind of, and also I'm interested in, it doesn't matter to me whether the artist, their work or conforms to my notion of what dance is or to my aesthetic. It doesn't matter to me. I mean, it's kind of a cliche. The only dance I like is good dance, you know, is what people say in the past. And I think that's kind of true, but sometimes you don't know what good dance is, or you don't know what a good manifestation of something is. But certainly you can sit there and allow yourself to be engaged with what's happening. As I was saying about the thing around discovery, you can lean into what's happening as opposed to pushing away from it. And so this John the Baptist, I like this John the Baptist idea. I don't know where that came from, but I can take that on now a little bit more. I think I can embrace that because I do believe that. So I think, and in some ways what I've been, you know, like if we're gonna take the John the Baptist analogy, I mean, what he did was they said that he led the way. And so, and I think, and I've been thinking a little bit about leading the way about John Lewis, you know, like yesterday watching the funeral and listening to the speeches and stuff about how, I mean, it's unfortunate and it's sad and it's often true for me that I have an appreciation for people when they die. And I go, oh yeah, it's just like I live my life taking their contributions and what they do for granted. And then when they pass away, then I went, oh yeah. And so yesterday I was very much struck by that. And that's what John Lewis said. He led the way. He continued to lead the way. And his embracing of the young people in the movement and how excited he was by that is I mean, he was kind of like a John the Baptist that way, like leading. It's kind of like, again, about into the future. Like, I think it's incumbent on us to kind of, in any vision that we have, and vision implies this, that it's in the future, it's not in the future, but to really be aware that what you're looking at is something that's going to happen out there, and you look at it and you can see it, and then that guides your journey. And I've been doing a lot of mentoring, sometimes unknowingly. People think of me as their mentor. Some have been more formal. And I think part of the thing is that I think the John the Baptist context is the idea of mentoring, leading people, preparing people to move into the future for whatever that is. And that's really different. That's been a change that's happened fairly recently, because pretty much most of my career, and you know, you may not have time to mentor when you're trying to establish yourself and trying to establish a career. But obviously I must feel comfortable enough in terms of the establishment part of the mix, that I feel comfortable mentoring other people. And when they come to me to ask me if I will mentor them, comfortable saying yes. And I think, in some ways I feel obligated to say yes, even though I know they're probably not going to listen to 90% of what I say.
I think that's
not at the moment.
I think that's a really nice kind of like ending place. Like since we started talking, we started with your childhood and then adolescence, and then we kind of have zigzagged a little bit, and we haven't really been chronological, I guess, at all after that. But it's nice to start there and then end up with the future. I think that's, yeah. I think everything you just said was very moving, and also kind of about the selfless aspect of that work of being a leader and a mentor, since you know that as you're doing it, it's not necessarily like you're passing on your own ideals to these people, but you're kind of giving them a way of expressing what they believe and what they will fight for, which could be different, right? And so I'm content to wrap it here, and unless you have any questions again about the Yale Historical Review or this project.
I mean, yeah, I would. So the review is what again?
So it's an undergraduate history publication, and I think we've been around since 2009. And what we typically do is we publish 2 issues a year of undergraduate papers, which we solicit not just from Yale. This project called the 1701 Project, which is named after Yale's founding, and supposed to like evoke Elihu Yale's connection to the Atlantic slave trade, and to kind of take a look at Yale's history. And so we launched that this summer.
That's great. Actually, when you were talking, made me think about, so that, I said I played in the Yale concert band, and then we went on this 1-month European tour. And so one of the things that happened, it was the year of the 250th commemoration of the naming of Yale.
Oh.
And so we went, there was a commemoration ceremony or event that was happening in Wrexham, Wales, which was the home of Elihu Yale. And so we went there to perform and to do a concert and to do some stuff as part of the ceremony. So I was sitting in the church where the ceremony, the initial one was to begin, and who was the Yale president then? It was what's his name? Quite amazing and remarkable and powerful man was the president. How come I can't remember his name? But anyway, while I'm sitting there waiting for him to speak, and these people start to come in. This woman started to walk. She looks at me. I'm the only black person no, I'm not the only black person. There was a couple of other black people in the band are there, but I'm sitting on the aisle, and she looks at me and she pats me on the head. She pats me on the head and says, "Oh, isn't he adorable?" I didn't quite know what to do with that. I think I was mad. Yes, I think I was mad.
Wow. And then she just continued on her
way. Yeah. I need to find. Don't go away. I need to find out what the I'm like totally kind of. I almost have it. It's right on the tip of my tongue. Oh, okay. It was Kingman Brewster. He was very powerful. He had amazing charisma. It's almost like he could move things. He could bend you with his mind. I mean, I kind of felt that, you know, that with him, that he could will things to happen. All right, and you live here in Seattle, that's correct?
Yes, I live here in Seattle, and I'll be here in Seattle through the end of this year taking classes online.
And what part of Seattle do you live in?
I live in Madrona.
You live in Madrona, right near Spectrum.
Yes, I when we first moved to Seattle, I briefly took ballet classes at Spectrum.
Uh-huh. Wow. Who did you take class from?
I don't remember. I think I had one teacher who used to be at P&B, who, yeah, I think she was somewhat new to Spectrum, and I don't remember the name of the other teacher.
Okay. And that's when you were young, a child?
Yeah, I did ballet when I was, we used to live in San Francisco, and I did ballet there, and I also did Bharatanatyam from the time I was 6 to 12 years old, but then I stopped when we moved to Seattle.
Uh-huh. We used to have Bharatanatyam at Spectrum.
Yeah, you had group classes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So maybe, well, I'll hear from you and I'll reach out to you as well if I have a question.
Perfect. That sounds great. Well, thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.